All right, so we are going to move back to our regular meeting. And I guess no one is signed up to speak. So we will move to unfinished business. And let me get there. So, let me get this down. All right, so how do we want to do this? I know that we received some backup on this. The first one was the liaison committee. So we received the backup information on the OCTA contract. And I know in that it said that there is to be, according to their contract, a liaison committee. So I guess going forward, I think that that'd be an important thing for us to have. I don't know how everybody else feels. I mean, we had the discussion at the last board meeting, just to be able to, I think, ensure that everybody has an opportunity to speak, feel like they're being heard. I know that there's a lot of times information gets, I don't think intentionally, but lost kind of along the, through the dialogue as it goes from person to person. And I think it makes sense to have a board member or board members present to be able to hear.
They have direct feedback from whatever, liaison they're communicating with. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we would take because each of us had a school, and we would just go into the school and formulate, we use the OCTA item and basically establish that committee, and then have a meeting with the principal and then the other significant members, and then coordinate with them to have, or do we want to have quarterly meetings? Do we want to establish a schedule, or do each individual committee establish their schedule?
I think each thing is going to be a little bit different.
Right.
OCTAs certainly have a schedule set for their meeting.
The only thing with that I would say, and I think that we've kind of, well, I can speak for myself, kind of the learning curve is going through this. I think it always makes the most sense to make set meetings in advance, because we all get so busy, and then it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna meet, we're gonna do this, and then it just never happens. So kind of like the same thing with the committee meetings, like with our community relations. Like we met with our team 2 weeks ago, and we said, all right, let's make the dates for next year, so that they're written down, and Karen will put them up on the webpage. So I don't know if when, obviously it won't be me, but you all will do that
All right.
in the beginning, before the year starts, and sit
Right.
down with whoever, and Carrie's not here, do you know who that would be from?
So the language
I was gonna-
says, do you mind if I?
No, please, yeah.
We have a district liaison that meets monthly, and Karen organizes that at the beginning of the school year.
And who does that, what does that mean?
It's not a really set committee, but it's fairly consistent. So typically, we see the building principals, or presidents come. So the OCTA building president,
Okay.
or presidents, or if they're co-presidents, they usually come. But then sometimes, if somebody puts forward a topic that needs some discussion, you might see some different people come from a particular building
Okay.
to join the discussion.
So there's a OCTA building president for each one of the buildings,
Yes.
and so then they all come to the same
Either
meeting?
they come or they appoint somebody to come in their stead.
And then who runs the meeting?
It's really led by the agenda items that they put forward. So Karen sends out an email with all of the dates, and then each month, about a week before, she puts it out to the entire faculty. Any district liaison agenda items, send them to me, and then she creates the agenda. And then when we meet that day, we go, the superintendent attends, and then any OCTA members who want to come, and then we have the agenda items that they've sent in.
Okay.
So would it be disruptive, or if, on a quarterly basis, that we attended one of those meetings? As
Yeah.
opposed to reinventing the wheel, they're already
Right,
established, the
right.
meeting's already there, let's just pick out every quarter that we go, and, whatever our school is, that we're serving as liaison, and then just be able to sit in on those meetings as well.
Yep.
Because if there's one every month, I mean, we could almost, with 7 board members.
Right. each
pretty,
one
each
could
month,
attend.
somebody could take a different, you could
Mhm.
do it that way. I mean, then that doesn't, it's not such a huge time.
Consumer.
Yeah, I think that.
But it
makes-
gets at least you have a board rep at every meeting, you know, some board members would obviously have to do more than one, but I think that makes sense. So when you guys put that schedule together, then plug the board members' names into each meeting.
Yep.
And then that will be known to all of the OCTA members. Now, what about Lake CSEA?
As far as I know, we aren't involved in that liaison committee at all.
Okay.
As far as I know, I've never been made aware of it anyway.
Yeah, I don't
So
know.
does this conversation revert back to the last meeting when we talked about you guys getting information from the
Yeah.
trenches?
Correct, yes.
So to speak?
Yeah,
We're trying to figure out a direct way to get information back to the board via board member, as opposed to,
being,
passing through
Right.
3, 4 other people, and then it might get to us, or if somebody in the middle there feels it's necessary or not, right?
Right.
So that's what we're trying to.
So that, as far as that goes, I mean, if that's a contractual ACTA thing and they want that to stay ACTA, then you're not gonna be able to expand it into all staff or
Right.
all shareholders
Well,
or
you
stakeholders.
so
can.
I
in the
wonder,
building.
we can, I mean, we
You
have
can.
that decision,
You-
we
you
can
can-
do that, so.
But it's OCTA's,
Right, it's
it's
in their
OCTA's
contract. It's in their contract.
So-
If it's not
I get it,
CSEA.
that it's in their contract,
But
but
just
we can
saying
be
going
invited
forward.
to a CSEA meeting.
Right.
If they want us
Right.
to.
Yeah, that's correct.
Right.
We could be invited,
Mhm.
and we could
Absolutely.
be there.
Right.
And
One of the what I really liked is a few years back, I can't remember who was superintendent at the time, it might have been Ben. But during the budget process, when there were budget workshops during the day, he actually reached out to association presidents and invited them to those budget meetings.
That's a good
And gave them release time, if it was at 2 o'clock, well, okay, well, you can be released, you can show up at that meeting. It put us at the table so that we had contractual information, so if the board had a question regarding any of our contracts, we were right there with that information. Or if we had our own staffing issues that were opposed, that in opposition to, whatever principal or whatever the case may be, we were at the table and we were welcomed to the table by the board members too, and we were well
Right.
received, and everybody listened to what we had to say. So I think as far as that goes, the budget process, I'd like to see that happening again. And us all being invited to the table so that you have that perspective and we are at the table to answer questions for them.
indirectly from you.
Right.
I think that's a good idea
Yeah.
too. I think that,
I
and then
think
that
it's a
kind
great
of
idea,
goes.
it's just, but don't wait till one time a year to do it.
Right.
I
Right.
think having a liaison, understanding what you have to deal with through the year, in the winter, what's the
Right.
what are the hiccups, what, dealing with the food.
Oh,
is it-
absolutely.
All those things, and if you have something that, rather than just having a workshop when there's 10,000 other items.
Right.
That
And we're under
you're
the gun.
struggling with, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Right.
Then,
Jim, how many times a year does your group meet?
As a membership, twice, 2 to 4 times, it depends on what we can accomplish. A lot of times I'll have a couple, membership meetings or say at the high school, but then I'll try to have membership meetings at
But
transportation.
at a membership meeting, would the topic that you'd want the board to know about, would that necessarily come up? Or would that only happen like during budget time?
Those topics do come up, but quite often we're able to handle those through labor management too, and we try to tackle them as they come along, so. I think, the conversation from the last board meeting, that's one thing that kind of struck me was the whole budget process. Like, I understand where, you're coming from, Jim, with the month-to-month thing, and I would welcome that too.
Well,
But-
just, quarters is fine,
Right.
it's-
Quarterly, I think
yeah,
we said
it-
quarterly,
It's
yeah.
just, if you only do it once, then you receive information, you process the information, make a decision on the information, and that's going to budget.
Right.
We do that in 3 minutes,
Right,
right? And that could be 10% of your budget.
right.
It'd be better for us to have more knowledge of what your needs are.
Right, because we face
Yeah.
different obstacles during the course of the year too, so especially, let's say in winter. say the board member, so a particular board member is getting a bunch of calls from a certain neighborhood that sidewalks aren't shoveled or this or that.
Right.
And the knee-jerk reaction is that we're not doing our jobs, but the factual end of that is that we've had a custodian that's out on comp for, 2 months, and we've had a different sub in there every day, and, or
Or
sometimes
it's
not
not
at
even
all.
your sidewalk to be maintained.
Right.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
so that definitely a quarterly thing,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
those issues
Yeah,
come
I
up
think
would
that's
be all.
great. I mean, it's just yet another way to open up the lines of communication and making sure that we're all receiving the
Yeah.
same information.
Right, and as that moved along, I think the people that were liaisons in those buildings would become more comfortable
Right.
with being able to have those
I
conversations with
agree.
the board member
Yeah.
that has that building.
Yep, to provide an outlet for that would be,
Right.
I think, advantageous.
So, I mean, if you, really talking about the liaison things, to extend it, I mean, so we have the OCTA, we have CSEA, and I think too, utilizing each one of us being paired up with a school, I think making at least one, if not two, of the home and school meetings would be another way to connect that link, that direct link to parents, I mean, I don't know, I just think if we're going to help communicate one group, we should make ourselves,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, I mean, but you've opened up the community, relations committee where the public and the parents have
Can come,
the
yeah.
ability.
right,
If they want to be responsive, then they can reach out to the board
Right,
via
that's
email,
true.
phone, they can.
or
do it.
even that could be, that's a good way you could encourage the people who are head of the different home and schools to come to that meeting.
Yeah, there you go.
Come to the quarterly,
To be able to pass
maybe-
that information back to the parents
Right.
who maybe couldn't be there.
Right.
But they could be a liaison to the parents.
I just think that, yeah, as many ways that we can show our desire to communicate with different, and our availability, I think
Yeah.
is better. I do think though, like going in this, Nancy, you sent out the, like the wish list sheet for the budget time for each one of the directors. So would that would affect CSEA people as well? Because when they submit their wish list, so that was another thing we talked about in the last meeting, that we were saying we wanted to get the same form that every director or principal will get, that has a list of, these are the things that I want, in list of priority, the cost, the rationale as to why they need them, so that when we are looking at,
You have all the same.
yeah, we have
you
the same
format.
criteria, the same form, so we're
Right.
really comparing the same information, and we're being, and then I think added to that is what we just talked about, is then having all those discussions leading up, so it's not, like, I think your point's right, when you get all that information, at the
Yeah.
end of the day, at one meeting, it's like,
Yeah,
it's too much, so.
So I welcome that and appreciate that coming from the board.
Absolutely. Anybody else have anything to add, or?
Well, just want to
thought,
say,
or-
are we making a decision here then? And we're going to make a decision that we're going to meet quarterly, and that each one of our liaisons to the schools will start and meet
I-
those heads?
I think it's a process that needs to be started, but I think everybody's schedule for each piece that there will be a liaison to is gonna be different, right? So whoever is in that school has to figure out what that schedule is, and maybe it's bi-quarterly, maybe it's only
Right.
twice a year for something, maybe it's 4 times a year.
Why, I mean, probably what I think, I would imagine there's ample time between now and the reorg meeting, where these different groups and of people, you guys who are gonna be putting the schedules together, could kind of put some information together of options, and then maybe at the reorg meeting, you guys could establish that and say,
Yeah.
let's set the dates
Set the dates
for
for
these
A, B, C,
quarterly, and so that literally we start off the year with dates that go on the website, and everybody knows that they're happening. But at least this gives you guys, I mean, is that enough time for everybody to kind of sit down and think about, like,
Yeah, I would ask that out of respect for OCTA and their contract, and that is their contract language, that there's a conversation had with them before
right,
you move forward with inviting other people into that liaison meeting.
right. So,
We can get some more information.
Jen, do you have any thoughts on it?
Well, I guess I'm trying to find the contract language specifically, because I don't know if the intention was to have the district liaison and the Board of
No.
Ed liaison be one and the same.
No,
I
it's really
think
two separate.
It's two separate ones.
Okay.
So I don't know as if the option of having a board member attend
And
the
okay.
monthly district liaison is really the intention of that language.
So like if you do what Jim said, is you have a conversation about it and then at the next meeting,
Mhm.
or email the board and let us know what your Octa's thoughts are on.
Mhm.
right.
You may have an idea that we're not thinking of at this point.
Well, a board member wouldn't have to sit for your whole meeting either. They could.
No.
they could-
Right.
Board members here, any issues you'd like to.
The board
relate?
member's not there to pick
Then
apart
pick 'em
the
up.
information.
No, no,
The
no.
board member there.
Oh, no, I
the only
didn't,
reason
no,
they're
no,
there-
I didn't believe the intention was
Right.
that. I
We
just
may
mean
not
it would be
even-
two separate meeting
Right.
times.
Well, and that's just it. Like, if you guys have a meeting for whatever the circumstance is, or what,
So you have your
Whatever the
executive
work is,
session. and then you
invite
open to the
us,
public.
whoever the liaison, invite us to come be a part of that meeting for whatever period of time you want us, just as a line of communication to the board.
Right.
That's all that,
Right.
am I right in saying?
Yeah, I think at this point, like, we put the ball in your guys' court, and then you
Right.
guys can figure out, what do you think is going, how is this gonna
Okay.
benefit you the
I would
best?
like to see them separate, honestly, because I
Yeah.
don't know as if the district liaison has been meeting monthly.
Okay.
And I think your idea of having it done quarterly and those that can attend that, I think that would be very beneficial.
Okay.
Rather than waiting till budget time to do that.
Absolutely. So we'll set up for quarterly meetings, and then
Makes
you guys
sense.
will approve that at the reorganizational meeting and get those on the schedule.
Calendar.
After we hear from Octa.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay.
Thank
So,
you.
do you guys wanna send us an email, or do you want to, and then we'll just kind of come up with
Absolutely.
that preliminary plan?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
would be a fixed date.
Yeah.
It would be,
No, I'm saying that they would
Yeah.
kind of come up with, but then the fixed dates would get set
correct.
in July.
But that would be the responsibility of the group that would like to have a board member
Right.
as a liaison to
Right.
convey information back to the board.
Exactly.
Right? That
Yes.
would be their
There,
focus,
that's what I
their
was saying, it's-
responsibility. Yeah,
It's
exactly.
in there, in your court,
Right.
but I would like to see the board approve it so that the dates are done, so it doesn't get forgotten about. Because I know everybody's
I
busy,
see
I'm
what
not
you're
saying, you know what I'm saying?
So you're trying to lock in the date?
Just set the, yeah.
Yes,
right.
just set quarterly dates, and if there was a need, just like we said in our committee meeting, like, we have 4 quarterly dates with the understanding that if something came up, like this year with the capital project, you just add another meeting.
Right.
Right.
But at least you know, there's 4 dates
Mhm.
that, you know, no matter what, we're gonna meet. Whoever is gonna be there is gonna be.
Yeah.
Nancy, may I ask, when do you start with the budget process typically? When would be an
November.
appropriate? It would be November? Okay. Just so we can kind of have an
Mhm.
idea of when it would be best to have those thoughts, those ideas.
Mhm.
And could you
Okay.
include, whatever you send to the board, could you include Karen Canali?
Oh,
Because she
mhm.
keeps the master schedule.
Mhm.
Yeah, she'll put a calendar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody have anything else on that? I think the other ones are quick though, but that was good, I mean, that's a big one, that's important, I think, that we're all
Well,
on
that's
the
A
same
and
page.
F. so.
Okay, so the next one was the B, field trip grant.
And that's the sheet I handed you. I believe you had asked about the Connect for grant of New York State Park. And it is any New York State park that you, school can apply, a title building can apply for to attend a state park. And then it's also DEC sites, and it lists some other sites that can go to. So this is the information for.
Thank you, I
You're welcome.
appreciate it, yes.
Thank you very much. Anybody have anything else on that? Okay. C is community member email. Anybody remember what that was? Okay. I responded.
That's good.
That, and what was, I don't even remember what it was about.
It was questions from a taxpayer on general questions.
Okay.
It was forwarded to me by Brandon Legault.
Oh,
Bell.
Yes, okay,
Okay.
we're good.
Is that the issue we just talked about
Yes.
recently?
Yeah.
Can we resolve that now? Or what do we-
We have to put it in board.
Yeah, we have to put it
because
under
it's a
Board of
Yeah.
Ed to
Okay.
make the motion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And have the discussion, yeah.
Okay, so D is OHS scheduling information.
So that was the question about the message that went home through Jupiter Grades.
Yes.
So I found that, popped it in there, and then I gave you all kind of just a loose step-by-step guide to master schedule building and what happens over the
Yes,
next
yeah.
4 or 5 months.
Thank you for.
You're welcome.
Any questions or thoughts on that? And the next one was the environmental club trip to South Africa. And I know somebody sent you.
So I sent out kind of a memo. I had reached out to Catherine Celeste. I got some additional information. I included the link for the general travel advisories. And then I also resent everybody the original trip proposal from Carrie's office in case you had more questions about that.
Did anybody have any questions?
We've had a little discussion about that trip and the safety of that trip, as we've talked about many times. And just recently, there were a couple of kidnappings in Africa. Citizens were kidnapped. I think one was in North Africa and one was in West Africa.
Yeah.
Certainly not South Africa. But as we get closer, and this trip may be deemed too dangerous, and I know Catherine said that the tour company would determine at some point, but you know, the tour company is in there to make money, and they may want to push the envelope a little more than I'm comfortable with.
Yeah.
So at what point, if this board decides we got to pull the plug on this trip, we're not comfortable with it, what happens if we do that? What does the tour company do as far as refunding money or another trip or what?
So that's a great question, and I'll follow back up with Catherine, because right now, the way it's set is if the travel advisory changes or the local government advisories change, that's what they base their travel company decisions on. So if they came to us and said, something's changed and we don't think it's suitable to travel to that area anymore, they would give us the option of either refunding or providing another location. If we make the decision, I'll find out that information to you, that if we've
Do you know-
decided some concerns, we don't want to go there anymore.
Do you know what the safety rating is right now, what number?
Well, when I looked the other day, it was a level 2, which is your general increased caution. It's more like, okay, you're not just going to some fancy all-inclusive resort. So the increased caution lists things like, don't travel alone at night, secure your safety purses, backpacks, things like that. And that has been the status for that region since October of 2018. But I can find out more information about what happens if we decide we don't want to send them.
So the travel company, the tour company is right now okay with the 2.
Mhm.
And where does that go from there? Is 1 the worst? Is 1 unsafe or?
No,
One is the safest.
One is
One is safe.
One is exercise normal caution, 2 is exercise increased caution, 3 is reconsider travel, 4 is do not travel. But in the advisory itself, it says exercise increased caution in South Africa due to crime, civil unrest, and drought. Violent crimes such as armed robbery, rape, carjacking, mugging, and smash and grab attacks on vehicles is common. There's a higher risk of violent crime in the central business districts of major cities after dark. Demonstrations, protests, and strikes occur frequently. These can develop quickly without prior notification, often interrupting traffic, transportation, and other services. And then, you know, what she's saying is, you know, avoid walking alone, especially after dark, you know, the specifics. But I'm in complete agreement with Sam. I don't think it's a safe trip. I think it's a 2, and there are plenty of places in the world that are at 1s. And why risk?
Yeah.
That's where I'm coming from. I was in South Africa 2 years ago, or not 2 years ago, I'm sorry, gosh, 5 years ago. It is very different. It's like walking into southern United States in 1950s. I mean, the racial tension and the racial divides are incredible for South Africa. It was a huge eye-opener when we went. And what I've been hearing since then, I mean, we've kept in contact with people that we made friends with when we were there, and it's a scary place. I mean, you have entire farm families being murdered. And I said there was a tape just the other day. Arnold Schwarzenegger was in Johannesburg and was attacked.
Well, I think
In
a
a
lot of
public
the
place.
local instances that happen there locally probably don't make the national news.
No.
But I think the
Exactly.
kidnapping
Yeah.
a couple of weeks ago was, I think it was a French woman and her
Oh, yeah.
guide. And what ended up, it was a kidnapping and they wanted ransom.
Yeah.
And the French government paid the ransom.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, if our American kids are kidnapped, I'm not sure.
It's not in the budget.
Yeah.
I will find out more information and send it
Okay,
along.
thank you very much. Okay. The next one is the OCTA bargaining unit.
Well, we did this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
we
the
already
okay.
did.
Yeah.
Standardize, okay, we talked about this too, the standardization of the budget request form, so that's already happened, and do we need to approve that, or do we, it's just,
It'll just be a standard that we follow.
yes?
That's,
from-
that's what gets handed out to every principal of each of the schools.
And every director,
And every
yeah,
director, yeah.
Yeah.
right.
so, perfect. Microphones for board meeting,
Have been ordered
yay,
and should be coming.
okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
What did we decide on?
We're not doing lapel
Okay.
microphones. They're too sensitive. Jamie, do you want to talk to that?
I used those for years in the classroom. You're not students, but they break easy. The wires for those lapels are like hairs. So we ordered gooseneck mics. They do have an on-off switch right in front of them, but it won't be like one of the handheld mics on stand.
Okay,
They'll have a base and a longer gooseneck that'll come up and actually come towards the person a little bit more. We ordered 15 of them to have 2 spares, so there's one for everybody.
oh, good,
With that, we had to order a bunch of wires, so most of the stuff is getting delivered tomorrow, and then the rest of it should be Friday. So it should be good for the next meeting that you're not in here.
okay.
So they're all hardware
The
now.
hardware.
Now,
It'll be hardwired. Cell phones do have interference with speakers, but by not having it wireless anymore, it'll be less interference, and you shouldn't notice it unless somebody, walks in front of the speaker.
Can I just add, what brand are we going with?
The cables, I can't remember. Honestly, I don't remember. I can look it up and let you know.
Okay.
It's Radio Shack.
The guy.
They're out of business.
Well, no, it's just one of those things, because you don't want to make it twice, and I think it's important just to invest in.
They were decent mics. They weren't Sures that are $200-300 a piece.
Sure.
yeah, I agree with you, because you don't want to get the,
Yeah, it's one of those things where we're going to use them, and we want them to be as effective both
Right.
for Matt as well, and make sure
Absolutely.
that we don't waste the money. If we spend a little bit more, they're very durable, so I just want to make sure we're doing.
If they're terrible, I'll send them back. How's that sound? I'll test them out tomorrow when they get in. I'll say these are not up to standards of OCSD. I'll ship them back and buy better ones. But I did try to be somewhat conscious with the amount we were spending, because either way, it was
And there are some
10
cheaper
times the cost
brands
of that wireless unit.
yeah, some cheaper brands are very effective as well. I mean, but it's if they're gonna be here for a long time, and they're gonna get not abused, but they'll get use.
Yeah.
We might as well make sure that they're gonna be solid.
Right,
I
and that's why I didn't want the lapel. I know from talking to a few of you, that's what a few of you requested, but I honestly don't think that's the way to go. People forget to unclip them, get up, mic rips out.
now how will this work when we do the traveling board meetings?
What do you mean, how will it work?
Will we would move the mics? Because I know some places that we don't have mics, and other places we do, so.
Do you want them set up in here? That was never something that we talked about. We can have things set up in here. This is a small area, so we weren't intending to do that, but when you travel, that's why we were getting them.
Okay. 'Cause
That's
my
also why
only-
we haven't bought them, because a lot of times, half the time we're in here,
Don't need
so we didn't want to invest a lot when
Right.
we're not always
Well,
on
my
the road.
question though then is because I've had a couple people say when they watch the board meetings on TV that they can never hear us.
Yep.
So I'm wondering, I've never watched one. I mean,
They're okay.
in these meetings, can you hear?
Yes.
So you can?
In here, I have good audio because, like the cafeteria specifically, the vending machines, the HVAC above you.
Yeah.
I mean, I can boost the audio, but it's very hard to filter, those, nuisances out of there.
Okay.
But in here, it's that it's very
We're not
quiet in
gonna
We're
here.
not
anymore.
going to be using the cafeteria
Okay.
for board meetings
Right, yep,
anymore.
I read that. So that's, I'm just wondering, like I said, when people have said to me in public, like, oh, we can't hear anything any of you guys are saying. I don't know, because I've never watched one
I
on
would-
TV. I don't know if they're referring to these meetings or if they're referring to,
I would imagine it was probably like when you guys travel. Like Layton, for example, the multi-purpose, the gym room. There's a lot of echoing. Again, the HVAC in there. It's difficult sometimes to get.
Yeah.
okay, all
Like
right.
the gymnasium at Kingsford.
Right,
I mean,
absolutely.
yeah.
But with Jamie's system, I can plug into that and, you know, as long as the microphones are being utilized,
Okay.
you know, I can get a good audio feed.
Okay, great.
We did buy wires for that too, so we can plug into that system when we are on the road.
Oh, okay.
So it won't be
perfect.
just picking up from his mic. Tascam,
Yes, Kim, okay.
they're decent, but honestly,
Yeah.
like I said, they're not top of the line mics, but
No, but they're for that purpose,
Yeah.
in this kind of environment, a little bit more commercial, so. That's good.
Great, awesome. Thank you very much. And the last one is the student bus information.
Right, that was me. We had, it was asked about the bus attendants. 18 of our 44 bus routes have bus attendants on them. 15 of those 18 are for students with IEPs. The remaining 3 are to assist with student management.
What was the number again in the beginning? How many?
18.
18 out of how many?
44.
44.
Is there, I mean, you obviously check in with the department,
Mhm.
transportation department rather. Has there ever been like is there a need for that or to have
One
additional?
to a student bus attendant for every bus.
Not, I don't know if we need one for every bus. I don't know if there's ever been or if there's a way for bus drivers to submit a request or a concern or a need. I don't know how all that works, like.
Tom has meetings with his staff,
Mhm.
and they bring concerns about student management. Parents even bring concerns about student management. When we're able, we will put a bus attendant on a run. We usually do it more if the bus driver is new,
Mhm.
to help them. Right now, we don't have a lot of bus attendants. We have a shortage of bus attendants and bus drivers. So to get additional ones, that we've had advertisements out there, but we're not getting a lot of people applying, so.
Yeah, can we, I was hoping somebody, I was glad you brought that up because just with sports, athletics and stuff,
Mhm.
you know, I know my son's called a few times and said,
Mhm.
we don't have a bus. Last week they had to leave school early, so they lost instructional time because they had to travel along with. What's the problem? Why do we not have?
It's not just
Drivers.
us, it is statewide. There's a shortage of bus drivers.
I'm also hearing, I mean, like, there's a couple people on Facebook that are always posting that we're not paying enough and they're going to other, is that part of this?
It is part of it. We're going to be looking at that next year, Heidi and I and Tom. I asked for the
We raised
sub-bus driver rates. I think we're the third lowest for sub-bus drivers. I think we're the third in the county in terms of rates. They're at Central, or not Central Square, but I didn't bring the data, so I apologize. But I know that Sandy Creek, Hannibal are lower than ours. Mexico and Central Square, I think, are higher. Fulton, I think, is lower, but those other two, I think they're pulling the drivers.
When they're higher, like, is it 50 cents or is it $5?
$1.
Difference.
Some of them are $1.
What is it?
Some of them are $1 more.
Oh, that's it.
more.
An hour.
Nancy, we've talked about this before, and, because this isn't a topic that's brand new to the,
No.
that I've been on anyhow. And part of our, and I wish Tom was here, he could address it. Part of our problem is the salary. The other part is people, like a lot of retired people that are still young and still want to be active, would like to drive bus, but they're required to get the CDL, and they have to pay. The district doesn't pay for that training. And when I said, well, why doesn't the district pay for it? Well, because this person might work for us for a year, and then they'll jump ship and go someplace else and make more money.
Sometimes it's not even a year, sometimes we've
Yeah.
had
As soon
bus
as they
drivers
get-
that
But
we
didn't we
just
come up with an
trained.
idea for how to remedy? I remember
No.
talking about this.
My idea was when you hire them, or when you train them, not when you hire them, but when you
Right.
train them, they haven't signed a contract
Yeah.
that says,
Yeah.
you will stay with us in the school
Same thing
district
as
for
a
3 years
nurse
or whatever.
Right.
at St. Joe.
Why can't we do that?
We can. I did talk to legal about that, but it's not enforceable. If they want to leave, they're going to leave, and are you going to sue them in small court? and
but-
incur the cost of that for $2,500,
But some
$3,000.
people are well-intended and would really like to work,
Yeah.
but
Right,
can't
they
afford to
can't
pay for
afford
their
the
training.
startup.
They need a
Right.
job.
Right.
Is it 15?
It's somewhere around there, right? The training for a CDL?
How
I
much
think
is
it's
it?
like $2,500.
Yeah.
Is it
Yeah,
up to
it's
20?
costly.
Jim's chomping at the bit.
Well,
Oh,
it's not just about pay either. I mean, we have over the years through the different contracts we've negotiated, we pushed down the number of hours that that you work in a week to be able to obtain benefits. So if we pushed down so many of those positions under 30 hours, they're no longer eligible for health benefits. That's part of it. One thing we did do with contract negotiations, we were able to put into our contract that once you have been hired, renewal of your CDL is paid for by the district, which has been, I think, a good help as far as retaining drivers. But between the pay and the benefits, and like you said, just getting started, when you're coming out as a sub and you have to pay for fingerprints and I mean, it's a process and it's expensive, but
there's
it's a multitude of different things that
There
make
is
it
another
difficult to
district
fill
that
those
does pay for
positions.
it, and they're not getting any more drivers than we are.
Really.
I knew statewide.
Well, it is an issue.
Right.
have we ever looked into subbing everything out?
Ooh, gee. Sit back down, Jim.
Well, if we don't have the drivers,
Yeah.
if we can't.
If we can't keep the drivers, how are these companies that, you know,
Well, I
they
don't
can't
know.
keep them either.
I'm interested in what is out there. What
There
is
are
it?
companies out there
What are
that,
they paying, right?
that we
the-
could contract with.
Yeah.
But we can't contract with them and have the drivers that we have. Because in the contract language for CSEA, the only time we can use contract drivers is if there is a trip that's over 100 miles. They have a contract language in their bargaining
The
contract.
thing with contracting out is you lose local control.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think the
absolutely.
drivers that we have, they form relationships with the students, they love the students, they'll take care of the students.
Yeah.
Where if you got some guy that's just coming in here from
I
wherever.
agree with you totally, Sam.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. I'm talking about if we're saying that we can't man our buses,
We gotta have another
we have to
solution.
find a resolution,
Mm.
right? I mean, that's.
No, I agree 100%. And I know, like Kathleen said, I know sports buses, they've had to call and make different arrangements with the school for traveling. You know, we haven't got a driver, we can't be there at 4 o'clock or
Right.
4:30, gotta push the game back to 5. Well, that inconveniences the other
Yeah,
districts
everybody.
too.
Yeah.
So it's
Right.
whatever. Am I right, Ron? Is that a true statement?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had to cancel several modified contests because we just don't have anybody, so the games gets canceled.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
And we have had,
You go through all the work, to put
Yeah.
together a team, to get the
Yeah.
coach, to get everything,
Yeah.
set
And then
up
you
the
gotta
schedule.
cancel.
But they do the same thing at the other end, and then
Right.
we can't have it.
Then you're already canceling for weather for some
Yeah.
of these.
Yeah.
but we've had the transportation supervisor driving, we have had the mechanics driving, and we've had the mechanic supervisor driving, as well as dispatchers, and
Yeah.
we're still short.
Yeah, I don't doubt that everyone's giving their full effort to it. And I know it's a statewide shortage. I mean, they got, you go down 57, right? Beeville's got this giant, huge banner out there advertising that they need drivers. We've got one on our corner advertising we need drivers. Yeah, everybody's looking for them, but, you know, just gotta find a solution. I mean, to
Right.
cancel games because we don't have a driver for a bus, that.
It'll be
to me, that's
interesting
not-
Yeah.
to see what I mean, Nancy said some districts are paying higher, and if we could find out there who's had the best solution in terms of, is it a pay thing at all, if there is that.
Yeah, could you send us that, like in transmittal, like the comparison of what other districts pay, and then we could take a look at that, and, I mean, I don't know who, is there someone you can talk to kind of brainstorm ideas, or someone who is successful in it, or maybe they could,
Yeah, who isn't having trouble?
right,
Yeah, and we might find out
But
that
in the-
everyone's got it, everyone has a problem, and it's not gonna be
It
resolved
is a
financially.
topic of conversation at my regional school business
How about
meetings.
we still do Hero Heavy Equipment Repair and Operations out at OC's with the city? why, do we teach still CDL driving to 17, 18-year-old kids?
Next time.
I mean, why don't we resource that?
In what way are you suggesting? 17-year-old kids?
Look at, you got,
Hey, Coach, I gotta go hit now.
yeah. No, what I'm saying is that there's graduates from the program that would be looking for jobs, right?
Also coming through the, okay.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about.
No, but you said 17, 18-year-old, like,
I
okay.
gotta get to the bus garage, Ma, so I can go to school.
That's right. I'm driving everybody, come on.
No, what I'm saying is there's
Kids
a
who pick up
graduate, I'm
first.
sure there's a list of people that have completed the program that
So
we
where
have
they-
put together that maybe we could reach out to.
It's a resource.
Right.
Because they're from our area, maybe they still live here, maybe they still wanna live here, maybe they'd like to work here.
And I think if we can look into ways to, you know, in order to incentivize them to do it, to figure out some way to alleviate that initial cost of, there's gotta be some creative way to do that. I don't know. What?
Are there grants out there to pay for it?
No, I looked.
Yeah, right.
I did look.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's
everywhere.
To the transportation supervisors?
Oh, wait, I have an idea. Could we do, like, if we paid for it up front and then it was deducted from their pay weekly? Or we said we'll pay for all of it up front and then we're gonna deduct half of it?
We could, but that's not
Weekly?
gonna prevent them from leaving and we'll get
Right.
stuck.
Right.
Because they won't make enough for us to recoup. If we paid for the whole thing and they worked for us for 3 weeks, we would never recoup that.
Right.
We did talk about that as well.
We've been talking.
Do the transportation supervisors in the county, do they meet as a group,
Mhm.
do they?
They do.
I gotta assume it's gotta be a topic at their meeting.
Mhm.
Sure.
I don't know,
Something we're gonna focus on.
I got a solution. Make the damn kids walk to school.
Yeah.
Uphill
Right,
both
Right,
ways.
Ellie?
I did.
I know you did.
Yeah.
I did too.
I did.
Uphill.
Both ways.
Too bad coaches couldn't just put their kids on a bus and drive them, or in a van or something, you know? Is there such a thing as a small?
Pretty sure the liability would be something no coach wants to take on.
We've only done
I
it.
feel
They're in the
like
wrong
I have a team in my
association
car
also.
most of the time.
We did it once on a small, one of the Suburbans, because one of the coaches had to take, I think they only had one student that made a state tournament, maybe it was for golf or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 days ago, there were 4 girls going.
Yeah, so,
Oh, yeah. All the
but
time.
that,
They do vans in
that
spring season.
coach had to go through all of the DOT training
Right,
at the transportation department.
yeah.
Half the girls lacrosse at my cute college, I mean, they do a bus, but that's because they have a big setup in town. But everybody who comes to play them, they're in 2 extended 14-passenger
Yeah.
vans. That's
Yeah.
what they're in. They all, that's what, I mean.
Do you need that same thing to drive a passenger van?
No.
The-
No,
No?
No, but-
there is a passenger license,
Yeah.
but it's not the CDL.
But
It's
you
not-
still need to
Can
go
high
through
schools
the
do that though, not
training.
colleges? Is it legal for high school?
I don't know, maybe that's something to look into. I mean, if this is a reoccurring problem, if we had that and we had people who were able to drive that in a situation instead of having to cancel the game, then you have another opportunity to,
But it'd be much more cheaper and efficient too.
yeah,
It's not football.
right.
When I was in school, we took city buses. We had, in
So-
Binghamton, we
Yeah.
had school buses for the outskirts, the rural areas, but city buses, we had to walk to the route, and you had a bus pass if you lived a certain amount past. So it was in cooperation with the city buses.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna look into that.
High school,
passenger.
that was
Yeah.
high school, not elementary.
More questions,
But-
more questions.
It also taught kids how to take a bus.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How
life
to do
skills.
public
Yeah.
transportation.
Okay, any other ideas or thoughts on that? Okay, moving on, to Board of Education. I think we were gonna add something to this agenda here. You guys want me to make the motion? In our discussion, we decided as a board, we'd like to, or I will make the motion to have the consent agenda viewable to the public on board docs. So,
May I say something? So there are a lot of pieces on the consent agenda which you might not want viewable.
for example,
For example, the special education reports that are on there with student names
yeah.
should not be viewable to the public.
Right, and
We-
we talked about that.
we all agree.
But you.
Any
you just said-
any consent agenda items that can be viewed, that you don't have to redact any names or anything?
Right,
So-
so anything that's personnel related, obviously, can't be.
Okay.
But all of the financials can be put onto
The
board docs.
treasurer's report is really a bank reconciliation, and I feel strongly that that should not be made public.
Why is that?
Don't you want anybody to see your bank reconciliation? It has our account numbers on it, it has all
Oh,
the
no.
transactional data. I don't think that's appropriate, but if you want me to, I will.
I think
No,
just,
what
I don't think it's
what we're
appropriate.
looking to be is, I guess, transparent to the public, to let them answer their own questions.
Right.
Through information. You don't feel confident in that?
I will get a lot more questions than,
I understand.
I'll do whatever you want me to do.
okay. So,
I absolutely 100% agree that there shouldn't be any personnel special ed items on there. I absolutely agree that none of our fake account numbers
Numbers, yeah.
should be visible. We're talking about information based on taxpayer money.
Okay, so you want everything that I provide, you want the fund balance projection, I just want to be clear. Monthly transfer report, the extra classroom reports, all of that you want public.
correct.
Okay.
Well, first of all, did we make a motion?
We didn't
I
make
Before
a
we got-
I
motion
made the
yet.
motion.
But we never seconded it
Yeah,
yet,
right.
so we went right to
Okay.
discussion.
Yep.
So, before we do that, I mean, we make the motion, and then second it, so we're official. So, you made motion, second,
I'll second.
second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Now we're doing the discussion.
Now we'll do the discussion,
Okay.
yeah, just so we're official in
Yes.
terms of that procedurally.
So we can, and we can say just.
No, you should have discussion before
Before we voted.
before you vote.
Yeah.
Well, let's take that, can I rule it?
Yes.
Yeah, so do discussion before
Before
we
we
vote
actually
on what
vote,
it is, right?
Okay.
Okay, so what parts of the consent agenda?
Can I interject?
Yes, yep,
I think you
absolutely.
need to vote to add it to the agenda. Then, once it's on there, then you can make a motion and then have your discussion,
Okay,
possibly.
all right, so I'm gonna make a motion
Because Karen,
to add,
To walk it in,
It's just to amend the
yeah,
agenda.
to amend it.
so make a motion to amend the
Yep,
agenda.
And add Board of Education item number 1,
Okay,
consent agenda viewable.
okay, and add, Board of Education 1, which is to make our consent agenda viewable to the public.
But not all of it.
well,
So now-
discussion.
yeah, now-
Yeah,
discussion.
now here we have,
Yes.
Right.
so that's her motion.
Yes, so someone needs a second.
I will second,
Yeah.
and then we'll have discussion before we vote.
Now vote on that you're putting
Putting
it
it out.
on the agenda.
Oh, this is just to bring it to the agenda?
Yeah, that's-
Oh, I thought, okay.
You love it.
I thought we had done that.
It is.
I thought Tom did that.
Let's do it.
You have to agree to talk
So-
about it.
Aye. I mean, if we're going to vote, yes.
Right, vote.
Okay. So now I need to make
I-
the motion like I did earlier. Okay,
Yes.
so I'd like to make a motion to make our consent agenda
We didn't vote.
viewable to the public except for personnel items. All except for personnel items. That's my
And special education.
Special ed.
It's, yeah.
Jim.
So somebody's seconded.
And to make, but also to make, so you're gonna make the treasurer's consolidated report, maybe more viewer friendly?
Just take the
Does that
bank
make
numbers
sense?
out.
Could you, so then you're, so the stuff that you're concerned with,
Well, it's just, I think I'm concerned because, A, no one's gonna understand it, and they're not going to,
gonna be
I
interpreted.
think a lot of it could be
It-
completely misinterpreted by the
Totally
public.
misinterpreted by the public.
Right.
Totally misinterpreted, because they don't know how to read that report.
Okay, so kind of as a resolution to that, because I think that it's important that we make these things available to the public to see. But I also agree with the fact that if there is no discussion at the table, then it could lead to confusion. So what I think is that we do have a 5-minute, rundown of the highlights of, you don't need to go in depth, but anything that stands out or whatever, and just make that a monthly meeting thing, that the finance committee, 5 minutes goes through and just says, this is a rundown of any red flags or any positives or whatever, and then move on. And then at least we're addressing it, we're not.
Wait a second, what if you do, do you do like a quarterly report?
I do we give you the whole entire appropriation status report. We give you the monthly budget status report, the management discussion, which has a lot of information on it. Tells what revenue's coming in, where we think we're trending.
Is that a better one than this one to put?
All this
For the public.
is the treasurer's report is just the bank reconciliation.
For the picture.
That's all it is. So I think when the taxpayer had asked for the treasurer's report, he didn't know what it was, but it's just a bank reconciliation. There's really no value in putting that out to the public.
There's not, when you look at it.
There's no value. If it were me, we can put out this management discussion and analysis report, which you get every month. I can give them, to make sure I don't have any accounts visible in some of this information.
So you're saying that this one would probably be
I think that this
more
one would be
appropriate.
very appropriate to put on, and I would be happy to do a monthly financial overview for the board.
Right, and I think that, just again, to talk about with policy, that is in one of our policies for our financials, is that I know you guys do a great job in getting us all the information, but the second half of the policy is that the board discusses it on a monthly basis, which I don't think that we do. So I think that that's something that going forward, I think all these pieces kind of put together, that we get them, yes, and everybody sits in their own house and reads them, or don't, whatever, but there's never discussion. So I think that we need to make sure we're doing that.
Well, then I think, yeah, we need to pull it from the consent agenda and be able to discuss those things.
Right.
That's the appropriate thing.
Yes.
I would feel better if we didn't make a determination in any way, shape on this tonight, actually until the
I agree.
superintendent, we're back and we can adjust.
I absolutely agree. But there should also be a gatekeeper to it too, and somebody should have that assignment, right?
Relative to the board?
Well, I think there's gonna be information on there that, if it's up to me, put it out there, right? But I'm not understanding of some repercussions that may be if something does go out.
Yeah, but if somebody were, I'm just saying, the devil's advocate, if somebody were to foil for this information, they would get all the information. If you go to other school districts, they do have a lot of their financials online. So I'm not, and I think that the majority of the public, I don't think that they're gonna read through them.
Right, I'm speaking specifically to the stuff that we're gonna take out of the consent agenda that will not be public. Somebody has to be in charge of that. Somebody has to be
I see what you're saying.
responsible for that.
Who's gonna-
And
yeah.
it needs to be a part of the discussion.
Right.
So that somebody is delegated that responsibility. That same responsibility can be communicated to Nancy or from Nancy to that person to say that we shouldn't have the account numbers out there,
Right.
right?
Is that the board clerk then?
I don't know, right? That, it's a discussion that we should have. Maybe somebody already has that responsibility. I don't know.
Well, can we table this
Yeah.
until Dean comes back and have this discussion again? And we can consult in the interim as far as legal and
Yep.
see where
Right.
what's going to be the best route to go, and we can look at it.
And
Right.
that gives them time to discuss and.
Right.
In the meantime, if we
recommendation
wanted
back.
to put out that monthly report that Nancy already does provide to us, to make that public,
To make that,
can we do that? Would that be satisfactory to
to do the
answering
first
some
thing right
questions
now,
for
I
right?
think we just wait.
wait on every.
Yeah,
and then,
right,
you
it's
know,
not gonna
and then
take,
get a
yeah, it's not
recommendation
gonna take
from
that much, yeah. let's
the
do it.
cabinet.
So we're gonna table it for our next meeting.
Yep.
I moved the table.
Second.
Second, what, Jim did.
Can I take a minute just to plant a seed here, because I was trying to think of where to put it in here? Nancy and I are attending the Association for School Business Officials, which also has a personnel, human resources thread, and we will not be here at the June 4th meeting. So we were going to just put it out there that if you, obviously, if you want to go ahead without us, you're welcome to do so, and we can share information with our other folks.
Mhm.
But if you wanted to have just that thought, and when Karen's available, she can put it out there that we either move the date or.
Why couldn't we just do it for the second meeting in June, and then you guys go to that meeting, you
Yep.
get information about how other districts do
Yep,
that,
absolutely.
what they provide,
Yeah.
and then you've got more information to give us.
I just wanted to put it out there that we.
So we'll table it for the second meeting in
For the
June.
second.
Anybody vote for my motion?
Yes, we did get a second.
Yes.
We got 2 seconds.
Okay, so all in
All
favor?
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
I said aye 3 times. Every time I was gonna vote.
It's a song, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that was easy.
Yeah.
That's why you walk stuff in.
Oh, I lost my spot.
Unfinished business, A.
No, didn't we already do that?
We did,
Okay,
on 7, 9,
Rec-
that area.
Can I just
Recommendations.
ask before we go into that, sorry, whatever happened to finance committee, where did that go? Do we have one and I don't know about it?
We have.
Remember we used to have a finance
I
committee?
think that the whole process got changed. I don't
Didn't
remember.
get changed. It was just a-
I think the finance committee essentially fell on, help me out here.
Into audit?
The audit committee.
They're two different
However,
meetings.
the audit committee doesn't meet on a regular basis, so that was, and that kind of goes to what I was saying earlier. I think that going forward, I think that needs to be, start up again, so that the dialogue, you all would have your committee meetings to hash through everything, then bring it to the full board meeting to share it with the rest of the board. I mean, that has to happen.
track of it for you.
So I think that,
Who's saving it?
There was a time when you and I first came into it, there was committees and we
Right.
had the meetings on
Yes.
Tuesdays or Thursdays or
Right.
whatever it was. And you would have that information, and then I think it was Thursdays, because everything went out on Friday.
right,
And so you could bring that information back. What happened is that we're recognizing so many committees with so many responsibilities to go to so many meetings,
Right,
that we
that
said,
was-
we'll bring it all the way through, just bring it and present it at the meeting and
At
have
the-
discussion that way.
right,
And
yeah,
what that
yeah,
does,
you're right.
It takes away that window of opportunity to read, analyze, react, question, do
Right.
whatever it is, and vote, right? And instead, it's just boom, it's on the table.
Well, and also too, all the financial stuff gets put on the consent agenda. So it's
Right.
never taken off the consent agenda and put onto the regular, so there's never any discussion. So not only do we not have the committee, we
Yeah.
also don't have it on the regular agenda to talk about it. So it's a double
And with that
whammy.
committee, you also had like 2 or 3 people that would look at it
Right.
and, anticipate, and then you had more of an idea of what questions to
Right.
anticipate, whether it was personnel, whether it was.
Or at least they slowed
you know,
it down when it was
yeah.
at the meeting to ask a question to allow some other discussion. It wasn't ill-intended. I think it was a matter of streamline is what we were trying
Right.
to do.
And I think it was I think it's worked well in other areas on the agenda. It's not worked so well with finance, but it has worked with the other, because I think it has created more dialogue,
Yeah.
where when we first got on, I feel like everything kind of went through and there was never any open dialogue.
Right.
And now there is more of that, but for some reason with finance, it's not. And I think maybe even simply taking it off of the consent agenda is gonna, I don't know, get people talking. Because it is, like I said, again, to stick to black and white, it is a policy, and the board is supposed to discuss financials on a monthly basis in public. So that's what
That's what
should be
you're supposed to do,
happening,
right.
yes.
Yep.
So however you guys figure out how to do that, get her done.
Let's vote on the consent agenda.
All right, so, moving on, consent agenda, there we go. So, I'm not sure what do I do with this?
No, we didn't.
There's no committee
Somebody
discussion,
skip.
no superintendent report, no recommendation?
No.
No, superintendent is not here, so we don't have that. No recommendation. Committee discussion, I'm sorry, thank you for pointing that out. Committee discussion. Has anyone had a committee meeting?
Nope.
We haven't had policy
They've all been
meeting.
canceled.
No, that was canceled. We did ours, but it was prior to the last one.
Yep, ours
So we
was
discussed
before,
it,
so
yeah.
we talked about
last
community
week.
relations. Anybody else?
We just discussed committees.
Yeah. What about the facilities?
Nothing.
No, it was
Nothing.
canceled because of the special Olympics
Olympiad.
Right.
that was going on.
However, I can give you an update. We received 6 RFPs for construction management firms. We reviewed them the other day. We're going to look to either bring them all to the committee or pare it down to 3. I haven't gotten the tallies yet on them.
Anybody else? All right, so now we will move on to consent agenda. Do I just, do I go one by one, or do I lump them all together?
The whole consent
The
agenda.
whole consent agenda? All right, so I have to read them out loud. So consent agenda A, yes. The minutes of the regular board meeting of May 7th. B is approval of the treasurer's consolidated report, monthly budget status report, and OCSD district financial report for April. And C, monthly transfer report for April 2019. D, extra classroom activities fund report for OMS, April 2019. E, extra classroom activity report, fund report for OHS, April 2019. And F is the special education board report, 5/21/19. Can I get a motion?
Move it.
Just discussion and then.
Well,
Well, we
no,
can't discuss because it's the.
Make
No, I know it's now, it's too, yeah.
and then second, and then discussion.
Yeah.
You guys
Would you
look
like
at
to second?
No.
I'll second.
You do it.
Now we can discuss.
Wait, who made the motion? Are you taking notes, Nancy?
Sam.
or Mike? Yeah, okay,
Sam.
I was too.
Sam made
It was
the motion,
Sam,
I
and then it
second.
was Sam,
Jim.
and then
Yeah.
Jim. Okay. Any discussion?
We beat it to death already.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Uh,
Aye. Opposed? Okay, next we have curriculum.
Oh, that's me.
Contagious.
Okay, A is the Curriculum and Instruction Local Grant Program. This is an agreement with SUNY Oswego and the Layton and FPS Learning Community. The SUNY provides a PD with the faculty at Layton and FPS.
Any questions, discussion? Could I have a motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second it?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, next we have,
Okay, B is a sailing trip, permission to go on a sailing trip to Kingston, from Kingston, Ontario. It is the sailing club, and it would be opened up to the environmental, or the middle school environmental club members, Oswego Middle School sailing members, Oswego High School environmental members. It's a tall ship sailing excursion, June 15th and 16th.
how many kids can go?
20 is the max. And they actually have a grant to pay for going on the trip. They just, that's my next item on the board, but they need money for the transportation. I'll be bringing forward that.
Carrie, how will the students be transported to Kingston?
That's what the next
Buses.
grant
No,
is.
to Kingston via the boat.
No.
No?
No.
No, they're
Oh, I'm
gonna,
sorry.
they're going to take buses to Kingston and then get on the
Sail.
boat.
So the ship is sailing at night?
I
Yes.
believe it will, yeah. The excursion is they learn how sailing on the
And the crew, that's on the ship, that they're experienced, they
They
do
are.
this all the
It's
time.
it's a program, yeah.
You want to say something?
Isaiah?
No, I just I'm a little concerned about it, just in terms of traveling on the lake at night. That's all. I mean, so for whatever reason, that brings out of me, it's during the day, I feel a little bit safer, but with the night, I just have a little concern about it regarding that in terms of,
The helicopter can find you.
yeah, little things like that. Yeah, but it's just, it is a tall ship, that's good.
And they're sailing it back for our Maritime Museum.
Oh,
Right,
okay.
coming back to.
And you're
HBO.
right, this moved from my desk to Carrie's
Yeah,
desk,
we
to
all
the
had-
superintendent's desk, we all asked questions, we
Yeah.
all talked to Allison Anderson, we're like, yeah, okay.
And I've heard, because I don't know these things, that Allison is quite the.
Allison lived on the ocean for
She
2
did.
years with
She
her
did.
family sailing a ship, so
Yeah, they have.
I'm very
crew.
comfortable with her.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Professional crew, yes.
No, okay.
You can go and swab the deck if you need.
More swabbing.
All right, can I get a motion?
Move it.
Second?
I'll second it.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
C is continuation of some of the grant proposals. There are two. One is for Fitchie Park, which will be Nick Little in his morning announcements, a continuation. He had applied for a grant earlier and received funding, and he needs to continue on to the rest of the school year. And then the other one is the tall ship sailing experience from OMS, and that is the cost for the transportation the buses to get to the tall ship.
Can I get a motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, next on the agenda is personnel.
Great. A, professional staff recommendation, resignation, Taylor Castaldo, elementary teacher at Kingsford Park School.
Can I get a motion?
I'll move it.
Second?
Second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
B, professional staff recommendations, teacher tenure. So as presented, these folks will receive tenure effective September 1st, 2019. This is our first wave of them. We tend to get them in batches. So Brian Bowden, music teacher at FLS. All at Minetto, Elizabeth Hecker, school psychologist. Carrie Ann Hunter, special education teacher. Sarah Pritchard Mitchell, special education teacher. Abigail Molinary, elementary teacher. Lauren Page, speech pathologist. Megan Parkhurst, school counselor.
Heidi, are these under the old tenure, 3-year tenure, or these?
No, these are this is the last batch of anyone who might have been a 3-year, but the law changed in 2015, so this is kind of our new batch of the 4-year tenure group.
Okay, that answers my question, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do I have a motion?
I'm sorry. Heidi, so what determines tenure? Just they work there 3 years, 4
No,
years?
4 years.
What
they-
exactly?
So whenever we appoint somebody, you'll see that there's some different language in the resolution now that's been there for the last few years. And that's reflective of the new tenure law, that they're required to get 3 out of 4 in their scores, so effective or highly effective, in the last year, as well as their average score. So whenever we bring it forward, they have to have earned tenure. It's a little bit more of an earning type of a situation. So the first, there's also changes in how we may decide that somebody is no longer a good fit for us. You have a little more leeway in the first 2 years as opposed to when it was a 3-year tenure. It was almost like you were year 1 and maybe somebody was doing a good job, but you just weren't sure, but by the end of year 2, you had to provide some substantial notice that tenure would not be granted at the end of year 3. So when they moved, the state moved to a 4-year tenure, that really gives principals and administrators 2 full years to look in and observe a new teacher and make sure that they are the best fit for us, so that by the end of year 3, you're feeling confident, and then they get tenure at the end of year 4.
So if you have any reservations with this, with the new laws, they have to be told by the end of year 3 that they may
Typically.
not?
Now, you still have rights as a Board of Education. The superintendent recommends and the board has those rights right through till the end of the 4th year. But usually what we see is if something is developing that we need to address, we may put a teacher on an improvement plan. We may have really frank discussions between the administrator, the teacher, the relevant parties at our level.
So that all would be done before it came to
Correct.
me.
Yeah, but we don't see
I
any
was
of
just
that.
gonna say
All
that,
we
yeah.
see is the recommendation
Yes.
through the steps that ends up at Dean, finally to us, and then that's it. We don't see any improvement program that they might have been through.
No, correct. The only time you might see something is what's called the Jewel Agreement, where we are saying we're not going to grant tenure. And if you don't act on tenure, teachers and teaching assistants get it by something called estoppel, meaning you can't hold up somebody's whole career because a board doesn't want to act on something. It's a protective measure. So once we get to a certain point, if there was a recommendation that, you know, we're still not quite sure, we've done a lot of work, but this person just isn't quite ready to get tenure, we can draft what's called a Jewel Agreement, which extends tenure for a period of time. We might be waiting on a certification, we might be waiting on the completion of an improvement plan, and that allows us to legally avoid tenure by estoppel.
Yeah, but either way, that wouldn't come to us, because you would make that.
But you see
that
the
deal,
Jewel
and that would-
agreements, you voted on them over the last couple of years, there've been a couple.
Yeah. But if it comes to the board level, and
Then-
the board votes no,
On
not
a
to give
And that
tenure,
forces the
then
decision.
that teacher
Correct.
has the right to come to the board and want to,
Yep,
by
there are
law.
some appeals,
Yeah,
due process.
Board has to have a good reason
To
by law.
not give
To not
them.
follow the
Right,
recommendation.
because once it's come to us and we vote no, then that teacher has a right
Right.
to appeal no
Present their
why.
case, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you see the principal recommendations, they put together snippets from the last period of time that they've been with that particular principal, and it's based on the domains of the APPR evaluations.
Okay. Any other questions? Can I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Second?
Second, that's my job.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
C, professional staff recommendation, leaves of absence. So you'll see that most of these are related to folks who are serving in another tenure area. And we're starting to see this, again, first batch of positions as people are extending their leaves and staying in their new roles for the second of their 2 years that they can do.
And that is just 2 years to be able to sit in that before they have to make a
Correct,
determination?
yeah.
One
And
way or
then
the
at the
other?
end of this coming year, these folks, they would have to make a decision, are they going back or are they staying with their new area?
Any other questions, discussion? Can I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll
Second?
second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
D, extra compensatory position recommendations for the Oswego High School. Special education scheduling, 8 shuts, 8 days max over the summer as needed.
Any discussion? Can I have a motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
E, extra compensatory position recommendations for Safe Bucks. They are for our administrative interns, one at FLS and one at FPS. Yep.
We had a question regarding administrative intern.
Gotta move it.
What?
We have to move it.
Oh, excuse me. Fine, okay. I'm
Can I
sorry.
have a motion?
Okay. Need Karen.
Can I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Okay.
Go
now we
for
can discussion.
Now, I will discuss. I was just curious about administrative intern and that
Did somebody
designation.
second?
I was gonna
Oh,
say,
geez.
Sam seconded.
Okay.
We'll just say that he did.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
These intern positions are for the summer school, the Buck School,
Right.
and that's grant funded. This isn't coming out of general.
No, I just designation of administrative
Sure.
intern.
The
what's-
title, right?
Yeah,
Oh, the
title and
title.
what do they have to do? in-
So these are folks who are in an administrative program of some sort, usually through a local school, so Oswego, Lemoyne. And they are at the end of, typically the end of their coursework. And just like when you had to student teach to get your teaching certificate,
Practicum.
you have to do an administrative internship. And sometimes you'll see a couple people put together a couple of summers. Sometimes it's a summer and something during the school year. So they have an internship that's approved by their administrative program advisor.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Any other? Good question. All in favor?
Aye.
Second? Or second? Opposed?
F, extra compensatory position recommendations, summer counseling days as needed for both the high school and the middle school.
What? Okay, I have a motion.
Move it.
Second?
A second.
Okay, I have a question. So do we add any extra days to these? Because I know this has been a discussion in years previous about did they have enough days, did they not have enough days? They
So
had
we-
days taken away.
We did have to add one additional day, and you can see that's the asterisk for Sean and Barb,
Okay.
because we have a regional summer school, and they required a counselor to be there on the scheduling day and the opening day.
Okay.
A counselor present from each of the component districts, so that they can handle scheduling issues that come up for our particular students. But otherwise, this is the same number of days as last year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
G, support staff recommendation, resignation, Joshua Cran, school monitor, part-time at the middle school.
Have a motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
H, support staff recommendation, temporary summer. Again, these are some positions that we fund for some time over the summer because they have specific tasks that they need to complete. You'll see Sherry Lawton, library clerk, Janine Regan, account clerk typist, and Cindy Zuber, clerk. Those are our 10-month clerical, a few of our 10-month clerical positions.
Can I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I, support staff recommendation, provisional, Claire Hosley, account clerk typist, reclassification. So this is another one of our items that we had worked on with City Hall, because the position that she was previously in, data processing typist, was not really appropriate for what she was continuing to do for our department and for Jamie. So we worked with Nancy Stereo and the CSE folks to come up with a better aligned title, and so this is a reclassification. So she's appointed provisionally because she will have to take the exam, and that is also a discussion that Nancy Stereo and I and Jamie and Patty Perfetti, we all had with Claire, so she was informed along the way. And then that likely will be late summer, early fall, and then, like we've seen a few other folks, once she is successful on an exam, then she moves into the probationary period.
Okay, great, thank you.
Heidi, does this
Yep.
position have to be posted?
No, because it's already, if there's somebody already in it, and we're in agreement that she met the prerequisites, the requirements. So she completed an application, and again, we kind of talked that through with Nancy ahead of time to make
So she
sure.
can't be knocked out, all she's
Correct.
got to do is pass the test?
Yes, yeah.
So it's not a competitive test, it's just, this is her way of getting into the position?
Yes.
Huh, okay. But it protects her with civil service?
Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, so protected by civil service, but it's a non-competitive position. And that's what Nancy says?
If there's a
So-
test, it's a competitive position.
That's what I would say too.
They're not
Yeah.
all competitive exams.
Right.
So I want to be sure that I'm telling you the right thing. And
I think because it's reclassification and she's already there, I think it falls along
Yeah,
those.
I'm
I just-
comfortable,
yeah.
if you
no,
talk
I
with
just can't
Nancy,
think of the
because
right term, because Patty had to do the same thing
Yeah.
when we
Right, I
reclassified
remember
her
that.
Yeah.
position. She only had to pass the exam. She didn't have to score in the top 3 reachable scores. So it was how we worked with City Hall and
Yeah.
appointed it.
Okay, yep,
Yeah, and I think it all goes around that reclass.
Yes.
yeah.
If we reclassified it and there wasn't somebody in the position,
Yeah.
then
Then
it
it
would
would
become
be.
a
Yes.
competitive, open competitive exam.
Gotcha.
I'm probably butchering my CSEA law, but I think that's the gist of
Right.
it.
Yeah,
It's a very complex process.
yeah, it is.
Thank God for Nancy.
Someone make a motion?
I'll move it.
A second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
J, support staff recommendation, permanent, folks who have completed their probationary periods.
Can I have a motion?
Move it.
Second?
I'll second.
Brian? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Okay, support staff recommendation, change in status, Shane Cooper. This is a lateral transfer from OHS to OMS.
Can I have a motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
L is our support staff recommendation, summer transportation. There's quite a list as presented, and we also have underneath the chart our summer bus drivers, our summer bus attendants, our summer cleaners, and our sub-summer cleaners, all kind of rolled into summer transportation issues.
Can I have a motion?
Move it.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
M, support staff recommendation, summer food service appointments.
Can I have a motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
And N, our substitute and temporary employees.
Can I have a motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay.
Okay, next we have.
Can
Oh,
I,
yeah, yeah.
I'm not, I'm going probably totally out of line here, but when you had your conversation earlier about committees, and what happened to the whole committee thing, I think that's a good example of that is the questions that this just came up about Claire. The first meeting of the month was the committees. Those items weren't going on the agenda, but they were brought up to be placed on the agenda for the next meeting.
Right.
And they were open to discussion like we just had.
Yes.
And that sometimes brought out a lot of different aspects during the course of those committee meetings that might not have been thought of, or maybe something that came from ACTA or CSEA that was maybe a misstep by someone along the way. So the lines have kind of gotten blurred with the whole committee thing. Before, we always knew that at that meeting we could have open discussion.
Right.
But we're, even like right now, I probably shouldn't be speaking to the board, but you guys have been very open to letting us have
Well,
open
and I kind
dialogue.
of think
but-
that was part of
Yes.
this,
Yeah,
is
we
that we
never
said we
changed
did
that.
change
Yeah.
it, but we didn't, we're not saying now you can't speak.
Yeah.
We
Right.
still want to
Yeah.
encourage you guys to come and speak. It was just a way to, I think, get us to speak more, and keep you
To be
guys
more
doing what
informed.
you're doing, yes.
To be more informed.
Yeah, so it wasn't, so it just
When
felt
we're
like
making
before, it
decisions
was,
about your department
Right.
and your people, that we have better information
Right.
that
Right, well, the kind of the point I was trying to make was that now, this is on the agenda, this is being voted, you're making a motion and voting on it right now. In the past, if it was a committee, discussion, and something got brought up, it might not make it to the agenda. Whereas,
but
you know.
didn't we just have the committee meeting right before the regular board meeting, isn't that?
No.
No.
Or was it the
I mean,
whole?
you would
The
have the
first meeting of the
committees.
month was a committee meeting, and then
Right.
the second meeting was the one.
And
that
then we
was-
voted
that was
on
the
what
problem.
the,
Yeah,
oh,
that
okay.
was the problem, things got delayed, things that
Right.
needed to get done, they got
Then-
delayed for 2 more weeks.
Because they
So-
couldn't get the information in front of us to the committee so that we could review it, so then it could be brought to
Right.
this. So everything got pushed back another
Right.
2 weeks.
So our
Right, that's-
resolution to that was, we run this is a committee meeting.
Right,
Okay.
Until we vote, it's still a
Right.
committee meeting. So
All right, so-
when Heidi or Carrie or Nancy are talking, and we get to this, we move it, and we get to the discussion part, you're welcome.
can-
So
Yeah.
we're
Yes.
welcome during that
You're
discussion
welcome
part,
to
and
weigh in.
then possibly something could
Right.
Yeah.
get tabled and move
exactly,
along.
yes.
Right,
And
yeah.
I think Karen explained it. I feel like we were at Kingsford when we made that change,
Yeah.
and Karen kind of ran through how we would move forward.
Right. But I think that's a good point, and maybe, you know, it's a good lesson for us to have you say that, because maybe that is something that should be vocalize at the beginning of the meeting for maybe a new person who's not here, like some of you guys who are here all the time, to say, this is your opportunity, that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, when we
Yeah.
have these discussions, to speak up and let us know, maybe we are missing something, maybe there is something that we need to know about, because we can table it for the next meeting,
Well,
so.
that, and they could maybe bring different representation from
Yes.
each of their departments that could speak or answer questions to something that would be on there, that, you
Yeah,
know.
because definitely, I mean, like they all said, the whole idea of the changes was to make it less formal, more
Yeah.
informal, more conversational, and more of a collaborative effort
Right.
than, you know, figureheads, so, yeah. Great.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. What do we, finance?
Finance.
Yes, with Nancy.
I'm just gonna catch up with you here. A is an agreement with the Oswego Country Club for $2,500. This is our annual agreement. This is for next fiscal year.
Okay. Can I have a motion?
Well,
Second?
Nancy, I'm assuming by the date on the top of the letter that this is just a catch-up? This is for this year, for the season that we're completing.
Yeah. I thought it was for next year.
For the
Says January
boys for
25th.
next year, right in the
January
fall.
25th.
Girls for
Girls
next
now.
year,
Well, I
or
thought
girls
it was
for now?
It says 2019 golf season.
January 25th, yes, so the girls
Both.
now.
So the girls that are,
It says both
Finishing.
boys and girls.
It'll be 2020 golf
Right,
season.
boys and,
Next
boys
year.
and boys.
no, boys are in the fall.
Well, yeah, girls now.
I just thought this was for next year, for the season, because we've already had the season. I can,
Well, it says 2019, and I'm
Calendar year.
assuming that it's gonna cover the spring season for the girls and the boys season in the fall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they bill us that way just because they.
I didn't know you were still here, you gotta get in front of that.
she was hiding, she was hiding.
He's a big guy.
I know he is.
So yes, no, they do it, the way that they bill out is they do it per the actual calendar year. So it's, that you're correct, it's right now for the girls in the 19 season and the boys are in the fall season 19. We'll receive this again for next year, which will then be for the girls and the boys. That's how it goes. So it doesn't go for school year, it goes for their seasons.
Season, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Sorry, I missed who
Motion.
motioned.
Was it Jim and Sam? I think.
Jim and
Yeah.
Sam.
Just make sure. That was
Got
fine.
Okay. B is for the board to accept a donation from Minetto Home and School Association for $1,603.50. And this is to provide transportation to the Mets field trip, which they purchased tickets through the summer grant program.
Yeah. Have a motion?
Move it.
A second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
C is for the board to approve the budget amendment to put that money into the budget so we can spend it.
Have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
D is for the board to approve the awarding of the trash removal contract. It's a 3-year contract to Butler Trash. We had 2 responders to the RFP, and Butler was low.
Can I have a motion?
Move it.
Second?
Second?
Any discussion?
Is there a reason that there wasn't any backup to that, or did
Yeah,
I
I
just
was
not
wondering
get
the
it?
same thing.
You should have gotten all of this information.
Uh-uh.
In an email?
No, it should have been it should be in your board.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
not, it's not in
attached.
there.
Okay, I can make sure it's
Yeah.
there, because
Okay.
we have the RFP and then all of the results of the,
Right, yep, that's what I figured, I
Okay.
figured it was just something.
I'll have
Is
that
that,
updated.
did we have Butler previously, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're just staying with them.
Mhm.
Who was the other company?
I have that information to me.
Fair?
No,
No,
Syracuse Haulers, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah,
there's just 2 bidders,
that's it.
that's it.
Wow.
Really?
We sent it out to 4 companies and only 2 responded. 2 said they did not want to respond to the RFP.
I don't want our money.
They don't want our garbage either.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Bear with me for 1 second, I have to make a note. Okay. E is for the board to accept a donation from Mentor Oswego for 12 backpacks with student supplies in them for Fitchie Park School.
Can I have a motion?
Move it.
Second.
I'll let you do that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next we have student our student rep discussion. Ellie, do you have anything?
Yeah, so this weekend we had our high school prom. That was very wonderful for Mrs. Jackson and all the students and other teachers that helped her put the prom itself together, and then Mrs. Koskowski, I know, I have a side club that helped put post-prom together. Everybody that was involved, that was wonderful, good time. And sports seasons are pretty much winding down. And then there's a lot of concerts going on.
Well, I heard a lot of really good reports about the prom and about the after-prom party. Where does the money come from to give those great gifts and awards and the food and all that stuff? Who pays for all that?
I know that, I'm not on side club, that's the one thing I'm not on.
Okay.
I know that they donate a lot themselves. I'm just
Get a lot of donations.
And a ton of the community donates a lot of the prizes.
So they get the
Student council
prizes.
donated some.
What was the turnout at Lighthouse Lanes? That's where it was.
Over 200.
Yeah, I
Was it
went
really?
and stayed the whole time in the
Yeah.
hopes of winning something, and there were a lot of kids.
Really?
Yeah.
That's great.
Pretty good. I've gone the past 3 years. There's always a big turnout.
What's the cost to go to the prom?
This year,
Depends when you
Yeah,
buy
this
your
It all
year's
ticket.
depends on what they
35.
have in their account, right? That
For the
varies.
cost?
Started at
Each class.
30.
Yeah,
It
it's
started
used
at
to go
30.
up per week. Around 30.
Yeah.
And it goes up a little bit to try to get kids to buy them sooner rather than later. So 30, 35, 40 this year.
Something.
I paid more.
For
Yeah.
a ticket?
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is that a couple ticket or?
That's the
Individual.
singles.
Yeah.
And the prom was actually in the cafeteria?
Mhm.
Yep, it has been for the past 3 years.
Yes.
3 years.
But the way they transform it with the decorations.
Oh my God, it's amazing.
Like this year's theme was Wizard of Oz,
Yeah.
and it was gorgeous. I mean,
Personally, the
apple
hallway was
trees.
my favorite,
Yeah.
but like this year at least they had like the yellow brick road all through the entryway down, and they had a ton of trees that they made out of paper and just lights. It's crazy the difference.
Yeah. they-
And is it the junior class that does all that?
Yeah. Oh, there's a prom committee, correct?
Yeah, there's like
I
a
remember
prom committee and everybody can be on it.
There was 208 students at the post-prom, but there's, Mrs. Clark posted these in an
Oh,
email
that's
too.
awesome.
So yeah, it shows, that was the
Yeah, I saw
hall,
it.
that's what they did, it was amazing.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
I'm
Thank
sorry,
you.
I don't know if you all.
Your
wanted to
custodial
speak or
staff
if
at the high
we-
school was a big help too.
Oh,
Yeah,
I know,
yeah.
I saw where they had that.
Yeah.
They helped a little.
No flying monkeys that I saw. Ellie, any flying monkeys?
I did not see any.
Okay.
I
They
didn't
left
really
them
keep my
home.
eye on them.
Yeah, they were afraid probably the monkeys might
I got
scare
my
some
daughter
of them.
said
You
that.
They
got
do such a
it.
nice job, it doesn't look like the school
Yeah.
cafeteria anymore.
Because
It
it's-
looks like, I saw pictures, but.
There's a lot of people that say anything, but I don't personally mind.
That it's in,
She got it.
yeah, I just wondered when.
Nothing
what-
good.
Credit card number?
Well, I
No,
mean, the minute that
I
you
don't
go
do my
off
banking on my
campus,
phone.
it triples the price.
Yeah, I'm okay paying $30 for a ticket.
The minute that you go
That's
to
always
any
good.
venue.
We remember, we always had it at the college.
Huge,
We had it at the
huge,
college.
Yeah.
But once the college went through their renovation,
Yeah.
it was offline for a few years and then,
I think it may have been out of the price range.
yes, so at that point, we tried one other location, and again, it really pushed the price point too high.
Yeah.
And we don't want to leave the community, we don't really want the kids on the road that night, we want to
Right,
provide them
right.
the best
Yeah, yeah.
opportunity. And
Local.
what they do at the high school is amazing.
Yeah.
Custodial staff, food service, a huge thanks to Sharon Dowling, everybody who's involved, all the volunteers, it's amazing.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. Thank you. Next, items from the board. Anybody have anything that we haven't already covered?
Yeah, go vote.
All right. So we can adjourn. I have a motion to adjourn.
I make the motion.
Okay. Second?
It's the only one of the whole night. You saved that for.
Save it up for that.
Did you
made the second?
I'll second.
Okay,
My
all in
job.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.